would be fantastic. Or if you want to speak, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Whatever you're comfortable with.
And I just started recording. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm so happy that Essie is in library school. I almost finished.
Almost done. Will I finish my degree or will it finish me? Let's find out. Hi, Chris.
Whoever is Sophia LaMonica, we can rename you. If you see your name and it's not you, I mean, you don't see your name, let's rename you.
Just put your name in the chat and Sophia can rename you.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Chris, from Huntington. I'm in Fallbrook. It's a little bit south from you.
You're okay.
Orange County, Renee.
Hi, I'm Rosa. I'm from El Monte, California.
Hi, Rosa.
Hi, Rosa. Welcome.
Hi.
We have 3 Rosas.
And
And
to
this
Michelle.
Yay, go
Two
Rosa.
Michelles.
This is the only place I want to come. If it's not Rosa triple approved, I don't want to come.
Right?
Hi, this is Rosa Hughes. I am in San Jose, and I'm really excited to see Rosa Rodriguez and Rosa Peña, who is my new like figuring out how to get grants buddy. So thanks, Rosa Peña. Rosa squared and Rosa tripled is even better. I have to be honest with you that in all my time in grad school and all my time, I had a Fulbright fellowship to South Korea in every academic space. I have never been more than one Rosa. Okay.
Wow.
But wait until I moved to the east side of San Jose. The PTA president of my daughter's elementary school is Rosa. The other mom representative is Rosa. And all of a sudden I have seen new Rosas. So I'm feeling it. I think this is the new trend. Sorry, everybody else who doesn't, you know.
Michelle's
It's time
coming in
for you
pretty
to take
close.
over. The Michelles have had their day.
Yeah, we thought it was the Michelles, but I'm sorry to say this is a new day, ladies.
Awesome.
Well, there are now 2 Sophias, so 2 more Sophia LaMonica.
Oh yeah, I see that. So it seems like people are defaulting, some people are defaulting to Sophia LaMonica. So if you could just put your name in the chat, we can rename you. Or if you want to speak and tell us your name, we can rename you.
And maybe they can rename themselves. Is that possible? I don't know.
I think so. If you just click on the 3 dots on your upper right corner of your picture on
or if you right click on your own screen, it'll pop up that way.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think, do we want to wait or do we want to get started because it's 5:35?
Yeah, we can get started if you're ready, Essie.
Yeah, I'm ready. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Essie. I'm the Vice President of the San Jose State Reforma High School Student Alumni Group. And today we're having, I know I never say it right, I'm so sorry. Today we're having our cafecito con Dr. Michelle Morton from Cabrillo College. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll actually just share that she's one of my mentors when I attended Cabrillo College, and she's an amazing librarian at Cabrillo who advocates for all students, but I really appreciated having her as a mentor then and now through grad school. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to Dr. Morton.
Thank you. I've really appreciated working with Essie. She did a lot, had a big impact on Cabrillo, and I'm really excited that she's in library school and to see all of you in library school. I was going to do kind of a brief overview of the work I do and then just answer questions. So I have a slideshow I could start with. Is it okay if I share my screen?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And can you guys see the image? Okay, great. So again, I'm Michelle Morton, and I started as a community college student actually here at Cabrillo. and transferred to the University of New Mexico, where I studied Spanish and Latin American studies. And then I'd sort of always planned on being a teacher, and I was thinking about being a high school teacher, and I got a scholarship to go to graduate school and do my PhD at UCSC. So I ended up moving to that track. And I studied Latino and Latin American literature and focused on Spanish language documents in the US. And I'd still planned on being a teacher, maybe a community college English teacher. And but when I was writing my dissertation, I got really interested in working in libraries. And my first job was at the Bancroft Library. I got hired because I knew their collection for my dissertation, and I was bilingual, and they needed somebody that could work with their Spanish language documents. And after working there for a year, I decided to go back and get my library degree. And I'm very happy I did. So I started out at university libraries, at research libraries, and that was really amazing. I got to work at Berkeley and the Green Library at Stanford, but I did really miss working with students. And you know, those jobs for me were primarily building collections, which was amazing. There was nothing bad about it, but I did really miss working with students. And it had always been, you know, kind of my dream to go back to community college, because that had made such a big impact on my life at a point when I wasn't even thinking about college. So when the opportunity came, I moved to a college in the Bay Area, Kenyatta College in Redwood City. And then when a position opened up at Cabrillo, I came back to Cabrillo. In this picture I like, it's an English instructor and a counselor at Cabrillo, and we did a field trip to Stanford with the Puente students. So this is in the Stanford Map Library. Oops. So this is the Cabrillo Library, and just some of the services that we do that many libraries do. We do textbook checkouts. We do a lot of printing and computer access. Of course, students are using our databases and getting reference help. And we're a pretty busy library. We have during the before times, we would see about 10,000 students a week. And Essie has a lot of experience of all kinds working with those students. And I would say some of the hard things about being a community college librarian are things that happen at every library. Oftentimes your work is under-recognized or underappreciated, or just not very well understood what goes into running a library and the range of services that we provide. We're often viewed as unessential during budget cuts. So everybody loves the library. Nobody has bad things to say about the library, but when hard decisions have to be made, we're oftentimes the first program that gets cut. And those first two are related because people don't always understand the work the library does. They don't understand the impact of those cuts. There also are way more part-time than full-time positions. So the library that I work at, there's about 15 librarians, and only 3 of those are full-time positions. The rest are part-time. And there's a lot of multitasking, doing everything. You're not specializing in one area. You are doing reference, instruction, technical services, circulation, calling the police, you know, the whole 9 yards, because that's how it is in a community college library. But I would say that's also what I like about it. Again, it was an amazing experience to get to work at places like the Bancroft Library, but I really love being able to work with all programs. So I get to teach nursing students one day, history students another day, horticulture and construction and fire tech students another day, and I really, really enjoy that. And the other thing I like about working in a community college library is we get to do a lot of instruction, and that's another thing I really enjoy. In terms of the needs in community colleges, this is a general overall data in the community college, California community college system, which is about 115 colleges. And you can see in some areas, we're doing all right in terms of the students, the faculty looking like the students that we teach. But that's not true with Latino faculty in the community college system. There's a big gap. So that is definitely a need. And of course, all of these things are different in different colleges. So San Jose City College might look different than Cabrillo. And then within those colleges, they are different in different programs. So counseling in the English department might be doing better than the library. But overall, as I think you guys probably know, libraries have a long way to go in terms of having librarians that really look like the students and patrons that they serve. And in terms of needs beyond having a more diverse faculty, even though there's not a lot of full-time positions, it's a big system with 115 colleges. There is a real need for diverse and bilingual librarians. We need people that can be responsive and adaptable to student needs. Librarians can be inflexible sometimes. That's not what you can do as a community college librarian. You might have to, you know, help with a financial aid workshop or serve food or, you know, counsel people. You're not always going to be doing library specific tasks, and what student needs are change, and we have to be in tune with that and adapt to that. There is also obviously with moving online, but even before that, and even when we return, there's a need for skilled, effective, and human online learning. And all colleges struggle with the cost of textbooks, but for our students that are majority low income, there is a real need to transition these GE course textbooks to free online and print resources. And within our system too, it's really important to be able to collaborate and work in teams, whether that's within the library, faculty working with students and staff, or working across programs, working with counseling, with financial aid, with the Office of Equity. And then finally, you know, I think all of us are struggling with how to help students evaluate information in the current environment that we're living in. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about and looking for when we're hiring. And lastly, I will just say, I've really loved the work I do. And this year, while it's been hard, it's also really been a privilege to be in a position to be able to help people that are struggling in our community. And again, to reinforce that, I enjoy working with community college students because, you know, they're all ages and all backgrounds and all different needs. And that to me makes the job really never boring and enjoyable.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate knowing that you came, like Renee said in the chat, came back for full circle to Cabrillo. I think it's awesome to return to like where you started, and I would love to have an opportunity like that in the future.
Me too.
I do want to open it up to questions. I have some questions that I want to ask, but I want to give everyone a chance to ask first. So if you have questions for Dr. Morton, go ahead and raise your hand or put them in the chat and we'll read them out loud. Otherwise, my first one is, I think I'll just go ahead and ask it while we wait. You kind of mentioned it during your presentation, but I was wondering, can you tell us about some specific skills that community colleges seek in instructional librarians?
I would say, you know, first and foremost, an ability to work with the student population that we are working with. So some experience, demonstrated experience working with that student population, and an ability to, like I said, multitask and respond to changing situations. And then otherwise, you know, I would say the last few hires we've done for an instructional librarian, you know, the challenge, which is my area, the challenges are, you know, you're always going into other people's classrooms, and you oftentimes only have one session with them. So again, some kind of demonstrated ability to work with faculty and to work collaboratively with other programs in terms of reaching out and making contact, and also being able to be flexible and follow a lesson plan that might completely change when you get in there.
Thank you. I see Chris, your hand's up. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. This has been really informative. I'm currently taking a class on intercultural communication, and I've got two questions. One, especially with your incoming freshmen, what do you find that like they're lacking the most? Like, what do they need help with most? And second, how essential do you think it is to be bilingual?
I mean, I think for first year students, it's just a lot to navigate, especially for first year, first generation students. They have so much to figure out all at once, and every college student has challenges their first semester, but oftentimes first generation students or students who are already kind of pushing against the tide just to be there will take those challenges as a sign that maybe they're not meant to be there. So I think thinking about your job as not just being an English teacher or a librarian or a math teacher, but someone who makes people feel like this is where they belong and helps them connect to resources. So for example, we're really lucky in that we have a 1-unit library class that all first year students take. It's a co-requisite with the English 1A class. So that gives us a chance to connect with students early and to introduce them to library resources. So in that class, obviously, we're trying to teach them how to do research and write the papers that they need to for their English classes, but we're also teaching them how to be an online student, what kind of resources are available in the library, how to talk to your instructors, that you're not interrupting us when you ask questions, and also doing a lot of outreach and follow-up with students. Not when students disappear, really going after them to try to figure out what's going on and help them get the resources they need to get through their first semester. And in terms of being bilingual, I mean, I think it's important to think about it in terms of your population and in terms of your library. So how many other people can offer those services at the library and what is the student population that you're working with. For me personally, I feel like every job I've gotten has been because I'm bilingual. And that sometimes it was very specific to the work, like at the Bancroft Library with Spanish language documents. But so it's, again, it depends on the context.
Thank you. Samira, you had a question?
Hi, yes, I actually have two questions. I actually recently graduated from San Jose State University's MLIS program in December. So I'm in the part where I'm applying for jobs. And my first question is that I did apply to a few community college librarian positions, but when at the application, it has the pool in like quotation or whatnot next to it. So from what I understand, that means they're keeping the applications on hand, but they're not applying right now. So I was wondering how that process goes when it comes to actually getting hired at a community college. And my second question is, I know a lot of university libraries want to hire those who have at least a second master's. I also have a master's in history. I actually got that before I got my MLIS. It was because of the master's in history where I got the chance to work as a student assistant at the archives at San Jose State. And so that's how it got me to getting my MLIS. So how important is that second master's when it comes to applying for community colleges?
I would say it depends on the place. For us, we are thinking about your educational degree, whether it's a master's or a doctorate, as it relates to the work. So if you have a PhD that is not related, or you cannot talk about how it's related to the work you would be doing with students, it would not be as relevant for us in a job search. But I think the example you're using of a history degree is clearly relevant if you're going to be teaching students how to do research, and definitely there, you know, every community college has history courses. So I think the question would be demonstrating that connection in your application materials. And then in terms of the pool, one good thing about libraries having a lot of part-time positions is it is a way to start and get experience. So usually you can, or always, you should be able to talk to the HR department and just be very direct and upfront about your questions about those kind of things. But in my experience, we oftentimes have an ongoing pool, and then we usually will hire from that pool every maybe 2 years. But it just depends on the school.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So next is Arthur. How has the transition from in-person to online throughout the past year impacted information literacy instruction? And that's in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Essie. So for us, we already were teaching the course online. So that's something we've been doing for a while, and we have a really talented online instructor, Aloha Sargent, who does a lot with online instruction across the state. So we're really lucky to have her. And we've always, like I said, thought of our course as an introduction to online learning. So we spent a lot of time kind of getting oriented to the Canvas system. And we think of that as kind of part of the learning outcomes for that course. However, a lot of what I do is in person, and it is, you know, a complement to online courses, or it's just, you know, visiting and working in the lab with those courses. And this has pushed me to transition online, obviously. And that's been like really helpful in a lot of ways. One, I've learned how to work with online classes, just visiting them, which I hadn't done successfully before. And I feel much more comfortable with that and have kind of figured out how to do that, which means when we go back, I will be able to give, provide those services to online classes, which I wasn't doing before. And then the other thing that we've done a lot more of is building Canvas modules for specific classes, for a history or a biology or a health science class. And that has really taken off. And we had done a little bit of that, but I was nervous about kind of opening the floodgates to that. But I'm glad we did. And it'll be something we definitely continue to do when we go back.
Thank you. So a question that came up also, what soft skills do you feel employers are looking for in candidates, such as cultural competency, emotional intelligence? Are there any specific soft skills that Cabrillo College looks for in library positions?
Well, I think there are a lot of people skills that like we're all about connecting and collaborating. And so there are people skills in terms of being able to connect with students and make them feel comfortable asking questions in the library, making requests, asking for things that they need. That's big, especially with our student population, an ability to work with that specific student population, because I think, what's the word? So if some students feel entitled, I often feel like our students feel disentitled and, apologize for asking for help, or, don't reach out when they have very legitimate, reasons for not being able to turn in a paper, for example. So I think an ability to connect with our students is really important. And then same with faculty and staff, like an ability to work successfully with other people when you might be going into their space and having to kind of adapt to their workflow or figure out a way to do that together. Not everybody can do that, and it's really valuable. And then I guess the last thing, kind of going back to what I was saying about libraries being undervalued and underappreciated, an ability to communicate what we do. Because I know lots of times librarians get frustrated that people don't understand or appreciate what they do. In my experience, it's always going to be like that, and I don't know if it's ever going to change. So we're always going to have to be able to make that case strategically and, just share what we're doing and the impact that we have.
Thank you. Something that I thought of is when I served in student government I'm sorry, I muted myself. When I was in student government, I remember serving on interview panels for faculty and staff. And I don't remember ever sitting in on a library interview panel, but for academic librarians in community college, when they're being interviewed, do they have to, is part of the interview process putting together like a sample lecture, or is that a component? I don't remember.
Yeah, community college interviews are kind of strange. They have like very specific rules. I don't know if this was your experience, Essie, when you were sitting in on them, but they've gotten more flexible over time, but oftentimes there will be a list of 10 questions that you have to follow exactly, and you can't necessarily introduce new questions. And I think the idea is that every candidate has the same questions, to be fair, but it can make it a little bit awkward. And so I think anytime you're interviewing, like asking HR lots of questions about the nature of the interview, there's nothing wrong with that. And, it helps you feel more comfortable when you're interviewing. In terms of what you were saying about a demonstration, I think it depends on the position. So we will oftentimes ask somebody to do some kind of presentation or describe a project related to whatever work they're going to be doing. And it might be, for me, it was definitely a lesson plan. But for someone else, it might be like how they would manage a project and work with other people in the college, or how they would develop an outreach program.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Renee asks, are there differences between working at a community college versus a university, or are there pros and cons?
I think there's just pros and cons. It depends obviously on what's available and also what your strengths are. And, you know, for a lot of people, wouldn't want to be a community college librarian because in terms of the collection you're building, that is not what you're doing. You know, we have a collection, of course, but we're not building a collection for posterity. So you're not working with publishers and vendors and archives in the same way that you would at a university library. So I think, you know, as much as you can, talking to people that work in those different environments and volunteering and interning and doing special studies at those different environments helps you get a sense of what is a good fit for you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I have more.
Oh, I have one. I was trying to type it, but I'm not that fast. So I was wondering if there's a test for Spanish language. Is it an oral test? Is it a written test? What does that entail?
I believe that we follow, and I would say my college is not very good at this. I think we're transitioning to improving our recruitments, but I don't think we've ever been very good at recruiting and valuing bilingual faculty and staff. I think when we do a test, we do the county test that you would have to take in Santa Cruz County to qualify for a stipend as a bilingual employee. And that is not very challenging, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I took it. It's really basic. It's like simple sentences, and you just you read a piece of paper. I work in Santa Cruz Public Libraries as a branch manager, so I've taken the county exam, and it's literally like there's a person sitting in front of you. They hand you a piece of paper, and they ask you to orally translate and then translate simple sentences through written. So
Great, thank you.
And I think for the my system, it's only like 40 cents an hour.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is for the college, but I would think it's similar.
Mm-hmm. One other thing I remembered going back to the 4-year versus community college question, and I don't know, Dr. Villagran, if you have an opinion about this, but one thing that I appreciate about the community college system and the CSU system, as opposed to the university UC system, is librarians are faculty. And, you know, I have lots of colleagues at CS in the UC system that get to do all sorts of amazing work. But for me, I really value that, like having a seat at the table in terms of college planning and shared governance.
I agree with you. Oh, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry, my audio is having issues, but I agree with you. I think it does depend on preferences, because I have friends both, you know, that are on the promotional track and others that are not. And it also, I think, depends on size of institution, really what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And your promotion, as you know, there's more requirements, I would say, and different. So it just depends on what you're really looking for. And I don't know that there's either is good or bad, but you are correct. I think tenure or promotional track, you do have a seat or can get a seat at the table, which is critical. Otherwise, it's more challenging unless you are strategic in how you can get a seat at the table. So I do agree.
And I didn't mention something other obvious, which is you have to do research at a CSU or UC, and you have the opportunity to do research. So when I came to the community college system, I kind of gave up that opportunity. And I do have some chances to do it. And we get a sabbatical in the community college system. And I have opportunities to participate in research projects, but my job performance and tenure is not based on research. It's based on instruction and service to the college.
Michelle, can I ask you quickly, when you talk, this might be helpful for students, if you can just talk a little bit about the differences, because every university has different we call them RTP at San Jose. So your retention, tenure, promotion requirements, and how critical it is to understand what those are for your institution and for your role specifically, because you're required to publish, or service might count more than teaching, or whatever the mix is. Can you speak to that, at least with your experience?
Yeah, with my experience, it's really what committees you're serving on, how much instruction you're doing, what kind of projects critical to the college that you're involved in. So, you know, we have been going through this process of transitioning to being a guided pathways college. And so I worked a lot on that in terms of student support. And then you're evaluated in all your areas. And you have some discrepancy with your supervisor here at Cabrillo about where you're evaluated. But for me, I'm evaluated, you know, in instruction. I'm observed and have student evaluations. And then I would be evaluated doing some other aspect of my job, either at the reference desk or even, you know, running a meeting. And we're evaluated pretty much every semester until our fourth year. And then that's the final year for the tenure process.
Thank you. I think Sophia, you had raised your hand.
Oh yes, I have another question, sort of a follow-up to Samira's question about the pool. So you said it's about every 2 years you draw from the pool. So how the hiring process from there, what is the time frame? Do you anticipate you call someone that's, you know, had their resume in the pool for 2 years, and then are they expected to interview and start within the next 2 weeks or so, or how does that work?
Well, our time frame is usually the semester before. So if we were hoping to hire people in the fall, we would do interviews in the spring.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for that. I'd like some feedback from Dr. Morton and Dr. Villan. As a new graduate, if I had never worked at an academic library, how can I make myself appealing as like an interview candidate?
For us, it would be showing that you understand our student population, because we could have someone coming from Stanford that had been there for 10 years. But if they can't work with our student population and if they can't work in a library where they're expected to do every aspect of the work and deal with limited resources, they're not going to be successful at our college. So I think learning as much as you can, showing that you understand the college and the population. And, you know, so even looking at, you know, the master plan or the program plan for the library, and then showing how your experience working with patrons and doing programming and whatever aspect of library work you do prepares you for that.
And I think I would just add, remember that a lot of the skills you learn, no matter what library setting or segment you're in, are transferable. So I always have, when I do advising, I usually have students put down, you know, what are the skills you've learned? Like, what are the hard skills? What are the soft skills? Do a whole analysis of what your talent and skills are, your skill set, and then match it with, look for that job description and look for what they're looking for. And maybe there was a specific project that then ties into that, and it might not even be in the library field. It may have come from another field, the customer service. And if you're going to be in public service or the front end, you would need that communication and customer service experience. So tie that in. I think that would be my one bit of advice.
Thank you both. Rosa?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you have an opportunity to meet with students with that 1-unit course that you offer, which I think is pretty fantastic. I myself come from a community college, and I never had that opportunity to take that 1-unit course, or was never offered where I come from. So I think that's fantastic. But my question was, how do you, what kind of outreach do you do once they take that? Because you mentioned that you kind of sometimes lose them or they don't come back. So what kind of programming, or how do you do that outreach?
So we, kind of look at our limited resources and then prioritize certain classes. So we're prioritizing certain student populations. So for example, classes at the Watsonville campus versus the Aptos campus. And we have English classes that have extra units for students that kind of borderline placed into college English. And, if we have 60 English classes, we teach those, work with those first. And then, those are our priorities. And just trying to make that connection with students in the first semester. And then after the first semester, we're thinking about prioritizing by student population and also just looking at the class where they do research. So if it's an anthropology class and they have one research heavy class, that would be the one that we would focus on. And we don't do a lot of programming, to be honest. It's something that we would like to do more of. And the last library hire we did was somebody who had experience with programming. And she got to be here about 6 months before we close. So we'll see what happens when we reopen.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Otherwise, my last one is, it's just kind of a random question. Can you give some examples of opportunities for professional development at academic?
So that's something I think is really important. And because, you're always having to adapt to student needs and, by nature as a community college, but really every library. And I think it's important, it's valuable just to get outside of your context and see what other people are doing. At community colleges, there are a lot of great opportunities for professional development. Most community colleges have what we call a flex week or couple of days before the college starts. And at Cabrillo, we have a week. So you can attend events or you can propose events. There also is a lot of opportunities for professional development online through @ONE. And so there's classes on teaching online, on accessibility, on, working with videos and images. And oftentimes, for me, it's coming out of, whatever work we're doing at the college or, programs. So let's say, for example, programs that the Office of Equity are doing. They have 2 staff people and a lot of students. They do a lot with student leadership very effectively. But they do a ton of events that they can't do by themselves. So we collaborate with them a lot and try to support the work of other programs on campus. So even simple things like if they want to do a movie, you know, purchasing the streaming video and making it accessible to the Black Student Union that wants to have a movie night.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat. I noticed that academic libraries are now requiring diversity and inclusion statements. Do you have any advice on how to structure the diversity and inclusion statement?
Well, for us, it would be working with the, I was going to say the Faculty Senate, and I think that's a good place to start. The Faculty Senate at your college and the statewide Faculty Senate. And then also getting input from students on campus that are interested or need more of a voice on campus.
Thank you. And Samira, Dr. V also sent a message about she'd be happy to send you some names of presenters if you're interested. So you can go ahead and message her through chat. Are there any other questions? Because I have asked all of mine.
I can ask a question. So you mentioned Puente, and if I recall correctly, are those high school students?
For us, I believe there are Puente programs at high schools, but for us, it's a college program where students, and it's a program throughout the community college system. Not every college has a Puente program because you have to make financial and faculty commitments to participate in the program. But for us, it is kind of it's a cohort of students that work with one English instructor their first year, and a counselor and a librarian. And they are also matched with the mentor, and then do a lot of like college visits and kind of professional speakers. Essie is going to be one of our speakers this year. So it's a support program through the first year.
That's awesome. So the other part of that was, I used to work in a public library, and we used to see a lot of high school students that, community college students at our public library as trying to get help with some of the research help. And we always kind of pointed them back out to the community college they were attending. And I've often wondered why that was. And I'm kind of curious to see what your thoughts are on that, as to why they're not seeking assistance where they should be. Instead, they come back to where I think they're more comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, is that, I think that's the reason?
Definitely. I mean, I think students go to the place where they're comfortable. In our case, that happens a lot in Watsonville. The Watsonville campus is very small. It doesn't have a library. It has a learning center that has a librarian there. And we work with classes, and of course our online collections are available. So we didn't have a library presence in Watsonville until about probably 8 years ago, and it's been growing since then. But one of the first things we did is connect to the public library to talk to them about what they were seeing from students. And I think when that happens, it's kind of a sign that you need to develop that partnership.
Awesome, because I think that was one of the things that if I ever did go back to public libraries, that I would want to do is connect with the high schools and the community colleges wherever I'm at, because I think that connection was missing. And I think most of them were first generation college students. So I think, at least for me, when I first went to college back in the 90s, and you feel lost, you know, when you enter this big building and you don't see anyone that looks like you. And it's really hard to walk up to someone and say, I don't know, because you think that you should know because you're already in college, right?
Right.
So, you know, trying to make people or students feel comfortable that it's okay not to know the, you know, that to ask for help, basically.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
thank you
And I
for.
think, you know,
answering that.
trying to connect with students through the public library and the high school libraries is something we've also tried to do. I was going to mention also, I don't know if any of you have worked at or been connected to the Peninsula Library System,
Mm-mm.
but that's a library system where the community colleges and the public libraries share a catalog. So students, when they come to college, they're using their same library card that they used at the public library. That creates a lot of complications in terms of like what you can and can't do with your collection. But it also is really a wonderful, amazing resource sharing. And it was always really nice when students came and they already, you know, were familiar with the system and already had their library card.
Yeah. Thank you.
I
Mhm.
didn't know that. That's really interesting. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. I'm gonna look into that. Rosa in the chat asks, are there any changes that have developed from teaching virtually as a result of the pandemic that you will keep when in-person instruction resumes?
Yes, we will, like I said, continue to do more Canvas modules. That's been really successful. And now that we have so many, it's we have sort of a base that we can work with and keep adapting. And then one other thing I will say, this is a little bit random, but I am a like sort of OCD about preparing for classes. I always want to have everything very planned out. Even though, like I said, everything can change when you get into the class, but I have not been able to do that in teaching on Zoom. I've realized that it's not what students need. I just have to meet with them and just start asking them questions and then base my whole lesson plan on whatever they need. So it's made me much more flexible, I would say, as a teacher, and that has been something I will definitely continue.
Thank you. If no one, Rosa, did you have something to say? I see
Yeah,
it.
I was just going to add something that you said, just kind of triggered a thought about, do you think that this virtual landscape has actually opened up opportunities for students to be less intimidated about asking for help in the library from a librarian?
Well, I will say, just as a backdrop, I'm sure a lot of you guys know this, but the community college population has been just devastated by the pandemic. Our population has been, you know, the hardest hit, and our enrollment across the country has dropped exponentially. People just feel like college is not an option for them these days. So that's the reality that is really devastating about the pandemic and economic fallout. But I think for students who are here, it does open some doors and it has changed the way we think about teaching. And I think it's made people be much more creative with online teaching and how to engage students. And I think there are a lot of things that we will continue that will be beneficial.
Thank you. So some feedback from the chat. Thank you for the outreach. I'm 2 semesters from graduating and one of my interests is public library outreach to prepare high school students for college. I really love hearing about collaborations between academic, school, and public libraries. Working at a community college in OC and our enrollment is way down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think even just getting high school students library cards and having them know what a database is and know what citation is can have a huge impact on college students in their first semester, because of course in California, we don't have that many school librarians.
That's true. In public libraries, for sure, one of the populations that is hardest for us to engage in to come into the libraries is definitely teens. So I hear about that all the time.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to that because I'm Renee, everyone. I work at a community college here in Orange County. But when I'm not doing that, part of my volunteering during my program with the iSchool was working with high school students. My fiance is a high school teacher, and I was actually doing some instruction sessions at the high school
Cool.
because they didn't really have that happening. And so I guess that's why I put in the chat that I really like hearing about that, because I would go in to some of the high achieving classes that were doing their own little personal research assignments, but I also went to the AVID classes. And for, I guess if folks don't know what that is, that's generally targeted at first generation students. Often they're low income, and yeah, just helping them, like you said, be familiar with databases, getting a library card. You know, how do you find credible sources? What is a credible source? Is really important for them. So that's why I'm like, I guess that's like a passion project for me on the side, is like helping those students, like you said, feel like they belong at the college, that it's like, it's okay if you don't know everything. And if I can be that kind of stepping stone for you to then go talk to your librarian at your school, hopefully that happens. So, so anyways, I appreciate you talking about that, because it's a lot of stuff that I've been very interested in.
Great. We need so much more of that. And I think somebody who was talking about kind of how you target populations and how you prioritize, I think oftentimes we go straight to the kind of AP and honors courses. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, absolutely yes. But if I have to choose between those and the ESL and AVID classes, I would definitely do the ESL and AVID first.
I agree. Thank you. Chris in the chat says, I'm a substitute teacher in OC, and yeah, it's amazing the academic things we take for granted that our students have never seen. I wasn't a traditional community college age student, but I definitely had never seen Google Drive until I started at Cabrillo. I didn't know how to use it. And I grew up like in libraries, so I wasn't really intimidated to like talk to librarians, but I definitely had a lot of peers who, as first generation, like they didn't know how to do things, and they were too like the imposter syndrome, and then they just felt really uncomfortable and like they didn't belong in the library in the first place. So to ask would almost be putting themselves on the spot for everyone to see that they weren't familiar. So I think it's really important to have strong advocates in our librarians in community colleges, because often it's a bridge from like a high school to a four-year institution where we don't know what we're really doing as first generation students.
And I think just really valuing that experience that first generation students bring. They have amazing experience to bring, and they can do very intensive research. But oftentimes the ways we talk about research in terms of like scholarship and peer-reviewed sources and you know, what is a valid source does not invite students into the conversation.
I think it's also like the language, like you were just talking about. They don't know the jargon, the library jargon. So it's a little intimidating. It's like, I don't know what to ask for. You know, how do I explain this? So that reference question that we all, all learn about is so essential. But I also wanted to mention that community colleges are not just for high school graduates. We also get older adults who are very unfamiliar or from other countries that are, coming in to get educated. And a lot of them don't know the process and don't know the language. So it's really important for us to also connect with them as well.
Yes. The first class I did as a community college instructor was for ESL students. And ESL students can do a lot of research. But it also changed some of my own assumptions about what people would be interested in and excited about. I sort of would minimize citation a little bit, just because I felt like students would get too caught up in being concerned about, the exact formatting or plagiarizing. But I realized actually the students I worked with in this class, the ESL students, felt really empowered by learning about citation. They were super excited about it because they were like, this is something that has been really mystifying and intimidating. And now I feel like I have a handle on it and I can move into my college courses and feel confident.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, it is 6:30. So I do want to thank Dr. Michelle Morton for joining us. Is it okay if, is it okay if people have questions to send them to us and then we can
Yes,
direct them to you? Thank you.
definitely, always.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. This was great. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
It was,
Yes, thank
guys
you so
had great
much.
questions. Thank you. It was really nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morton.
My pleasure. All right, good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Okay,
inviting me,
Team
Essie.
Rosa, bye Team Rosa and Team Michelle. It was
Bye.
nice. I hope you guys are all properly vaccinated soon and we are in California and we can have a Rosa and Michelle club soon.
That sounds
in
great.
person.
I like that idea.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.